supposed to talk about? What's my topic? And he said, whatever you think they want to hear. Last year we had a few things to cover, and I didn't want to repeat them. So I was thinking about a few things that make sense. It's been really nice here. By the way, I did just fly in from Saudi Arabia, and the event that I just did, I did the keynote speaker event there. There were 145,000 people. So it's really disconnecting to do that. So the joy of Secret Knock, and the reason that I do always come when Greg calls, is you guys are family. This is a whole different vibe and feeling in a Secret Knock event. When I walk back in, I'm back among family again. And it's been so nice reconnecting with so many people. So I absolutely do love being here. But I was thinking about something. And the first thing that I want to talk about today, to close out our day, is I want to talk about attitude. Because I listen to a lot of people talking about success, talking about their dreams, talking about their goals. And I think to myself, do you actually believe what you're saying? Are you actually giving yourself permission? Do you actually have the attitude that is going to enable you to do any of those things that you have done? For me, we were very blessed that several of the companies that we started, Priceline and Booking.com and Ubid, turned into multi-billion-dollar companies. I never in my life sat down and said, I want to create a billion-dollar company or make a lot of money or anything. Those were never the goals. But I never believed it wasn't possible, okay? People, every time I would tell people a goal or a dream, they would always tell me how incredibly unlikely it was. So one day I wrote on my wall, I wrote down improbable, yes, impossible, no. Improbable, I get that. I remember the first time when I took a break from tech, and we're talking about attitude here. I don't believe everything I'm gonna do is going to work, but I always think there's a chance, right? And that's the entrepreneurial way, but that's an attitude thing. When I took a break from tech and I decided I was going to come to California and make a movie, I told all my friends, hey, I'm going to start a film company and produce a film. You know what everybody said? Jeff, 98%. First of all, they said, you're a software engineer, so you can't do that, right? So automatically that's the attitude. You can't. Everybody's first response was, but you're a software engineer. Okay, so already that attitude is slamming the door shut. And when people started telling me 98% of all independent films are never going to be in a theater near you, whatever the number was, I said, okay. And they said, wait, you're still going to do this? And they said, what part of 98%, right, are you not understanding? But you know what I hear when somebody says 98% failure rate? I say, wait a minute, 2 people figured out how to do this? Right? Can you get me their phone numbers? Your attitude, here I'm going to tell you the punchline of what I'm going to talk about now. Your attitude determines your outcome. And people really underestimate how much your attitude determines your outcome. So I want to tell you guys a story that goes way back to, I was 10 years old. I grew up, by the way, in the Arizona desert with a single mom, 4 kids, 3 jobs. We were poor. A tribute to my mom, we actually didn't know we were poor. My sister just pointed it out recently, because my mom never focused on any of those things. She's like, did you know that we were poor that whole time? I said, not really, not until later. That's my mom's good work there. But anyway, I go to my best friend Mike's house one day, and I'm next door, and all the guys, we're 10 years old, all the guys are in Mike's bedroom, and there's a poster on the wall, and everybody's all excited about the poster, okay? And so I went home, and I'll tell you what the poster was. It was a Ferrari, okay? I grew up in the Arizona desert in the middle of nowhere with a poor mom. I had no idea what this was. And I went home and I said, Mom, I gotta ask you a question. She said, what? And I said, I don't get it. What's the big deal about this poster? All the guys were all buzzing about it. Well, by the way, to be honest, the poster was a bright red Ferrari, but there was a hot chick in it sitting on the car. But I have to tell you guys something. We were 10 years old, and I remember Mike turning to me and saying, that is so gross. That girl's bare butt is touching that fine car. Okay? So we were pretty grossed out that she would put her butt on a piece of machinery like that. But I said, Mom, what's the big deal? Why is everybody so fascinated? My mom said, what was the poster? And I said, it was something called a Ferrari. My mom said, well, that explains it. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, it's the unattainable dream. And I said, oh, my bad. I thought a Ferrari was a real thing. And she said, no, a Ferrari's a real thing. And I said, then how is it an unattainable dream? And she said, because son, neither you nor anybody you know will ever drive a car like that. And I remember at 10 years old saying, wait, what? And I said, Mom, hang on a second. I said, is the car real? And she said, yes. I said, does someone somewhere drive that car? And she said, yes. And I said, then why is it an unattainable dream? Okay? And I remember thinking that because, by the way, I'm not a car guy. I'm not even a money or materialistic guy. All right? But I don't like being told no. So this wasn't about cars. This was about my mom saying, in her defense, she said, I was trying to protect you from unrealistic dreams and expectations. Those are the best kind to have, right? Because if you only achieve 80% or half of shooting for the stars, you still wind up way up here. Achieving 100% of a small dream doesn't really get you very far. I don't want my dreams to be realistic. I might not achieve them all, but I'm sure going to go as far as I can to try. So I asked her again. I said, so somebody drives that car? She said, yes, but it'll never be you. And she said, you haven't even heard of one before today. You've never seen one. And I said, but somebody drives that car. My mom rolled her eyes. So I went to school the next day, and I tried an experiment. I said to everybody there, I said, hey, one day when I grow up, I'm going to buy a Ferrari. Remember, this isn't about cars, money, or anything else. This is about permission and attitude. Everybody laughed. My friends burst out laughing. I said, why is that funny? They're like, dude, seriously. None of us are ever going to drive a Ferrari. That car costs the price of a house, right? Ain't never going to happen. And you don't remember thinking, not with that attitude, it's not. If everybody's attitude is, that's never going to be any one of us, then it's not going to be. But I just refused even then to accept that. Because I started thinking, what I'm going to ask you right now, why are you letting anybody else put a ceiling over you? Why are you letting anybody tell you what you're capable of just because everybody else can't have it or whatever? Somebody drives that car. Why isn't it you? And it starts with the attitude when you say, okay, hang on, it's gonna be me. All right? When your attitude is, I can drive, I don't even want the car. I just don't want to be told I can't have it. Right? So from the beginning, so you know what I did? I got on my bike and I rode across the desert and I went to the mall, making little Ferrari sounds in my bike, and I bought the poster. And I brought the poster home. And I started thinking, even then as a kid, I started thinking, what else are we letting people tell us that is literally causing us, that we're editing out these ideas? We're already accepting the fact that what we're trying to do is not achievable, that our dreams are too big, that our ideas are too crazy. What else are we doing? So as a child, I took this poster and I wrote on the back of it 17 things. And these things were a list of the things that I either needed to accomplish or the things that I needed to prove or disprove. I'll give you an example of that. And I said to myself as a kid, right? I said, if I ever reach the day that I cross off the 17th thing, that is the day I will buy this car. Not because I want the car, but only to prove that the only person that sets your limits is you, not anybody else. And that attitude, I think, was a big difference because I never believed that it wasn't possible. Right? When some of you know this, but I took a break from tech and I started a music company and I heard the same crap. You're a software engineer, you can't start a music company, you know nothing about it. And that ended one day standing on the red carpet at the Grammys. We produced an album, got nominated, and actually won a Grammy. And I remember standing there because somebody said to me, did you ever in your wildest dreams, actually, what really happened was somebody, all the paparazzi were yelling and taking pictures, and somebody said, how do you feel right now? And I actually said, this is the dream of software engineers everywhere. And all the Grammy people were like, what? And the little dude with the earpiece leaned over and said, stop talking, you're killing the vibe. And I was like, I was talking to myself, right? But that was never the dream. But somebody said to me, did you ever in your wildest dreams think this moment could happen? The truth is, never was my dream to win a Grammy. That was a never thing, but that wasn't my answer. My answer was, yeah, maybe, right? If somebody had said to me as a little poor kid in the desert, think you'll ever be on the red carpet today? I would have said, why not? Somebody is, right? Why aren't you letting that somebody be you? That's where it starts. So anyway, I wrote these 17 things down, and I'll give you an example. One of them was, and I was starting to think that the reason people aren't getting where they're going is because they're letting everybody else set those limits and set that attitude. One of the things, for example, is somebody said to me, an adult, when I was young, said, "You're never going to be successful." And I said, "Why not?" And you know what they said? "Because you're not enough of an asshole." I said, "Pardon me?" And they said, "You got to be ruthless in business. Watch the movies, read the books. You got to be ruthless and mean and all that stuff." And I was like pretty stunned. And then here's what really got me. They said, "Have you ever heard the expression, 'nice guys finish last'?" Yeah. And I was like, uh-oh, why is that expression? Usually where there's smoke, there's fire. Why is there an expression like that? And I suddenly had massive self-doubt, right? Maybe I'm too nice, maybe I'm not. But then I started thinking the same thing. That's no different than saying somebody drives that car, but it's not me. Somebody makes those rules, somebody sets the standards, somebody proves it can be done a different way. So while I sat there thinking about it, I actually got kind of fired up. And I said, you know what? Not only will I not accept that I'm not going to make it because I'm not enough of an asshole, but I wrote something down on that list. I wrote on the back of that poster, I said, the key to success is not being a ruthless asshole in business. The key to success is taking care of people in a way that nobody else has ever treated them, and maybe that's it. And so I believe that was one of the things I wrote. And I said, you know what? If I'm right and they're wrong, I'm going to buy myself that car. So I started that list and that attitude when I was 10 years old. And by the way, when I was in high school, just turning 18, I was going to my closet one day. My mom's like, "You're going to be late for football practice, let's go." And I was searching for something in my closet, and that poster fell out all those years later. And I opened it again, and I was looking, and I was looking. My mom's like, "We got to go, what are you looking at?" And I was looking, and my mom said, "Oh, you finally saw the girl, right? Now I'm 18. And I was like, wait, how did I not see this before? And I'm looking at this beautiful girl. My mom puts her hand gently on my arm and says, "Son," and I said, "What?" And she said, "You ain't getting one of those either." And I remember looking at my mom, and I was like, "Thanks, Mom." And then I said, "One more question." She said, "What?" And I said, "Suppose I drove that car." My mom said, "Fine, that chick would probably show up." A funny thing happened later. I'll get to the punchline later. But I'm pretty sure that girl showed up later, and I absolutely didn't want her. Right? My mom, it was another valuable lesson that I didn't think of. I think that girl showed up because I drove that car, and that's the last person I wanted to spend any time with at all. But anyway, I eventually bought that car, okay? I eventually finished that list, but I kind of want to transition to something else for you guys as part of that attitude thing, right? Your attitude determines your outcome. And I want to ask you this. So I started to think about it a lot more as I got older. Who are you listening to? And one day I realized something, and I'm going to tell you kind of the tweet version of what I wrote on my wall. Just like what I mentioned earlier, I wrote on the wall one day, "You may be successful, but will you matter?" Right? Because I don't want at my funeral people to come up and say, "Man, did you see that guy's house or how much money he made?" I want people to come up at my funeral and say, "My life was better because Jeff was in it." I don't want to be judged by the number of dollars I made. I want to be judged by the number of other people's lives that I made better. So I started to realize that those sort of visualizations, I know a lot of you do this, writing those things down on the board, the things that drive you and keep you going. So one day I wrote the summary of what I'm about to tell you next. I wrote this down. I wrote, "We get our advice from proximity and not relevance." Okay, and let me explain what that means. The people around you who is telling you? When people say, "I don't know if this is going to work," I start saying, wait, you believed it would work the second you thought of it, right? If no one else was, tell the truth. And they say yes, and I say, why are you now doubting it? The doubt usually isn't coming from you. The doubt comes from you listening to proximity. Who are the people that are influencing you? You know who they are? They have one and only one qualification: proximity. They're next to you. It's your mother, father, brother, sister, husband, wife. Why are you letting those people tell you what you can and can't do? You know why? Because they're the people that are right next to you. And they're in your ear all the time. And one day, when my mother was telling me that one of my internet ideas was kind of a dumb idea and you should just go get a job. And the light bulb went off. And I said, "Mom," and I said, "You're explaining this to me because of all your years' experience building internet companies. My mom's like, wait, what? I've never built an internet company. I said, exactly. And then I was like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? Why am I being influenced by proximity? Those people love you. Those people are trying to help you, right? They care. But here's the thing. You're not trying to be them, okay? Relevance is what matters. Relevance is defined to me as this. Find somebody in the world that you want to be like when you grow up. I don't care how old you are. There's still somebody you admire, right? Find somebody that you're trying to be like, that you want to be like him or her when you grow up. That's relevance. Guess what? That person may not be in your life. Everybody around me. I remember a time that my stepfather came to me one time in like October. Said, what are you working on? I showed him. He came back again in about February and said, how's it going? And I showed him, and he said, wait, you're working on something completely different. And I said, well, yeah, in December somebody bought the company, so I started another one. And he frowned. I said, why are you frowning? And he said, this is going to look really bad on your resume. I said, what? He said, you're job hopping. I said, dude, people keep buying every company I build. And he's like, I know, but it just looks bad on a resume. And I'm like, what part of I've never had a resume in my entire life? Because that's proximity isn't relevance. He came from a corporate world where your resume is your future and job stability is something that looks good. And I'm like, I have to apologize that I've been selling companies every time I start them, right? That seems a little silly to me, but okay. So relevance, I started thinking, no one around you. If no one around you is the person you want to be when you grow up, they still love you. You know what I started doing? My mom would talk, and I learned to just nod, but I was actually like dancing to a Pitbull song in my head. And I was saying, it's great, Mom, thanks, Mom, love you too. And I didn't listen to a single word she said. The second part is relevance is something you have to find. When people talk about a mentor, right? And I'm building something in the airline industry, and people are like, you need to get a mentor, you need to find someone who knows the airline industry. Wrong. Domain knowledge can be learned, DNA can't. Don't find a mentor because they're in your industry. Find a mentor because that's a human being you want to be like when you grow up. That's what you want for a mentor. So I sat there and I said, who do I want to be? And it's not anybody in my proximity. It was a guy in town named Roger, right? And I realized that's the guy, and I just started cold calling him and emailing. And 3 months went by with no response. And one day, his assistant sent a note and said, he's agreed to meet with you at Starbucks for 20 minutes max, only because he has another meeting there under one condition. And I said, what? He said, you agreed to never talk to us again for the rest of your life. I said, I'll take the 20 minutes. I went to Starbucks. 3 hours later, we left. And he became my mentor. When Roger says, Jeff, that's a good idea, I listen. When Roger says that doesn't make sense, I listen because he's who I want to be like when I grow up. That is relevance and not proximity. And I kind of want to go into one other topic a little bit. So again, I'm going to summarize. Your attitude determines your outcome. Quit letting anybody put a ceiling over you or tell you what you're capable of. Everything I've ever done, I got laughed at by everybody around me. By the way, most of the people, when we were talking about Priceline, thought it was never going to work. You don't get your frequent flyer miles, you don't pick the airline. I had all these people, in fact, I'll tell you guys a quick funny story. Everybody thought it was a bad idea because they weren't the customer, they were proximity. And one day, a Wall Street Journal reporter called me. And this guy said to me, he said, what are you working on now? He followed my career. And I told him, and he said, that's a pretty stupid idea. I said, okay, whatever. And I said, can I ask you a question? He said, what? I said, what do you make, about 150 grand a year, right, being a reporter for the Wall Street Journal? He said, something like that. I said, well, that's interesting. And I pretended to shuffle papers. And I said, because our total marketing budget for you and everybody like you is, oh, here it is, $0. I said, I don't even have to slightly care what you think. You're so far outside of relevance for me. And he was a little offended, and he said, well, still a stupid idea, and hung up. So, sometime later, not very long, like 2 years, my phone rings, and my assistants, we've taken the company public. She's like, it's some reporter from the Wall Street Journal. And I picked up the phone, and I said, what can I help you with? And the person said, I just called to congratulate the team at Priceline. I said, about what? And guys, I know this is silly. I told you I'm not a materialistic person. But he said, we were the third, when we went public, we were the third largest IPO in the history of the stock market. We were the fastest company ever to $10 billion in value 11 months after we started the company. So again, those aren't the things that matter, but they do in the business world to people. Anyway, he said, I was just doing the math, and he said, your startup company is now worth more than all the airlines in the entire United States combined. And I stopped and I pulled it up and I was like, oh my God, we could buy all the airlines right now. And I said, not bad for a stupid idea, is it? And he said, what? And I said, you and I talked just about 20 months ago, and you told me how stupid this was. And he said, I never said that. I said, whatever. Okay? Relevance sort of is what matters. So that's why I want you guys to find relevance in your life and tune out proximity. All right? They love you. They're trying to help. I want to talk about one other thing, though, before I end here, because I think it's really important, and because it stems off this conversation about attitude. When I started thinking about that. And I get this question all the time about balance, right? My nonprofit, I mean, I spent my whole life building companies. Now we have a nonprofit that we're actually, I'm unbelievably proud of our team. We're on the ground in 200 countries now, which is, thank you, which is, the main focus of it is we teach people how to gain their own economic independence and freedom by starting businesses. So for example, I've been to every Muslim country, and we've taught Muslim women, I'm just giving you an example, who can't leave their home. They're basically economic slaves, right? They can't go anywhere, they can't get a job, and they can't leave. So you know what we do? We teach them how to start a company online at home, and one day they have a bank account, they have money, and they can just pack up and leave. It's independent economic freedom through economic independence. So recently visited a village in Africa as well, where when I first went to this village, this young man said to me, we all live in mud huts, no electricity, no water, no one has food, no one has a job, no one has a home. For the sake of time, I'll skip to the end, but the point is we teach people how to help themselves by starting businesses. And today he has 350 employees in 7 West African countries. I've been mentoring, but that's not the good part. The good part is he builds houses with running water and electricity for every employee, and he lets them pay for them out of payroll deduction for the rest of their lives. Wow. So that's, by the way, guys, that's impact. I always tell kids, quit being impressed by money and fame, be impressed by impact. Right? Money and fame don't mean anything. Impact matters. Why do you have money and fame if you're not creating impact with that? But it's hard to do everything that you want to do, right? And so time-wise, people say, you guys, we see you traveling all over the world, you guys are working in 200 countries. So people always ask me the question of balance. And that's the last thing I want to talk to you guys about a little bit today, about balance. And the reason I'm tying that back in is because it is about attitude, about balance. Because what I started to realize when I talk to people about achieving the mythical balance in their life is it's an attitude problem. And the attitude is you are holding yourself up to a standard created by everybody but you. You are listening to a standard. No woman is ever going to be a perfect wife, a perfect mother, a perfect CEO. So quit trying to be. I see all these people that have this attitude that you have to get everything right. That you have to achieve balance means every part of your life is perfect. Well, you know what's really cool about life? It was designed to be messy. We'd be bored to death if everything was perfect. Life is messy. It's sloppy. And the attitude you need to have is you need to give yourself permission to be good enough. Okay? Good enough is actually pretty damn good. And I started thinking about that one day because the reason people are unhappy is because they're trying to live to someone else's standard, right? And they're, instead of recognizing that I'm actually doing the best I can in all these areas, and that's good enough. So this last story I want to tell you, I'm going to come back to this car. One day, I told you guys I never wanted the car, but I wanted to buy it to close the loop. And it's kind of ironic because all these people that never believed in me call me all the time, dude, can I get a ride in your car? I was like, seriously. One day, the car's a race car, right? And so it has a glass cockpit around it. It's actually air inducted and it sounds like a jet. When it takes off, it's really loud. And it's funny thinking about attitude because one day, one of these haters got in my car and said, man, your car is really loud. And without thinking straight from the heart, I said, yeah, it drowns out the sound of no. Right? We wouldn't car would we? Because everybody in the world told me no, and I just didn't accept them doing that. And you guys know how that ends up, right? They all come back and they want to ride. In fact, one day I wrote on my wall, and then I'll do this last story, I promise. I wrote on my wall, I did fly all the way from Saudi Arabia, so I am going to finish this. I wrote something on my wall as well. I wrote, upgrade your haters to VIP. And I will just tell you guys the story of that. Everybody says no. And by the way, the reason I said haters is you guys know that most people in the world don't want you to succeed, and that has nothing to do with you. They're telling you your idea is bad. They're telling you you're not good enough. Because as long as you fail, they feel justified in not trying. When you succeed, it makes them feel bad. They don't even care about you. They're telling you that. You have haters because they don't want you to succeed just to make them feel better. Got that? That's very true. So I was telling this story one day of all these people that were saying, always telling me, no, my dreams are too big and I'm not good enough. And everybody told me no the whole time. And I was talking at University of Florida to students. I was speaking to all the students there. And I was telling them about all those people come back. So we started the music company. We were on tour. I was doing a tour with Beyonce. Everybody in the planet called me for tickets to the Beyonce concert. And I remember somebody called and said, hey man, can we get tickets to your show Friday? And I was like, let me get this straight. You want tickets to the concert that will never exist, created by the company that has no chance of success, that was launched by the idiot who dreams too big? You want those tickets? And everybody's like, I never said that. And I was like, yeah, whatever. The college kids started yelling, I hope you didn't give them any tickets. And I said, oh, I didn't just give them tickets, I upgraded them all to VIP. And they're like, what? And I said, you know what happens when you do that? They're backstage texting all their friends, dude, we're backstage at Beyonce. They're like, how'd you get backstage? And they say, Jeff gave us tickets. I'm like, wait, isn't this the Jeff you took? Yeah, that's the same. Upgrade your haters to VIP. So anyway, I got that car. And on Sundays, I would take a break and I would go drive. And one Sunday morning, it was 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning in the South. No one was on the roads. And I was going out to visit a friend who lived way out of the city. And I decided, well, I did get this car, right? So I might as well test it out this Monday. And to make it street legal, there's a switch. And when you split the switch, it goes to racing mode. And what's funny is the first time I did it, I thought someone was in the car, because it's programmed with a sexy Italian girl. When you say racing mode, she goes, are you sure? And you have to say yes, and then it adjusts the torque, the suspension, everything in the car, and you're in racing mode. So I started driving. I'm going 60, I hit the switch. Now I'm going 70, the car's loud as hell. I'm going 80, louder, 90 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour. Right at 110, I mean, it's deafeningly loud even though you're in the cockpit. I get to 120 miles an hour, and I'm flying along, and the car is so loud. And then something really interesting happened. I hit 130 miles an hour, and the car went off. It went dead silent. And I was like, oh my God, I worked all these years to get this car, and I just broke it. Right? And it's dead silent, and I don't know what's going on. So I push it a little more. At 140, it gets loud again. I did 150, I shouldn't admit this, but at about 180, I chickened out. And what happened was I finally passed a car and he never saw me. He changed lanes right in front of me. And I literally, almost lost it. The car almost on its own went around him, but my heart was like thumping, so I got off the gas at like 180. I get back home and I'm thinking, what happened? Why is the car so loud at 110, 120, 130? And at 1:30 it's silent. So I called the Ferrari people. And I explained to them what happened. I said, I'm driving this car and at 130 miles an hour it went dead silent. What did I do wrong? And the engineers, these cars are hand built, so you actually get to talk to the people that built your car. So he knew what he was talking about. And he said, oh, Mr. Hoffman, he said, I know exactly what happened. And I said, what? And he said, the car hit resonant frequency. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, Jeff, we designed that car to cruise at 130 miles an hour. Wow. He said, when your car is at 130, he said every gear, every piston, every piece of that car is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The car is in perfect harmony. We call that resonant frequency. And I hung up the phone and I asked a question I'm going to ask you, to myself. I said, resonant frequency, huh? What's mine? What is the combination of things in your life that you will wake up one morning and say, I am exactly where I am supposed to be in the world, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing with exactly the people I'm supposed to be with? What is your resonant frequency? So I'm going to tell you something that I came up with to do. I was the first time I was ever really conscious of that. Everyone's asking about balance, right? And everybody's trying to achieve it. And I started looking and I said, well, we have a perfect model, a cockpit, a dashboard of a car. That's all about balance, getting everything into resonant frequency, the cockpit of an airplane. So I went home, and I'll challenge you to do this. I went home and I created my own dashboard. I took out a pencil, and again, same question to you guys. What are the gears of your engine? Okay, what I mean by that is, what is the list of things you have to get right so you will wake up one day? Because I don't want this to sound wrong, but I actually really like my life right now, okay? And sometimes I feel bad when I say that to people. But I hit a point where I don't want to trade my life with, I don't want to be someone else. I'm okay with where I am. Do I have problems? Yes. Am I getting everything right? No. But you know what? I'll take it, okay? And the reason that I got to that point was I made this list. So what I want you to do is make a list of the gears of the engine of your life. So for example, I wrote down financial health. That counts. I wrote down physical health. I wrote down spiritual health, emotional health. Then I wrote down relationship with parents. Then if you have a significant other, your personal relationship. Then I wrote down friendships and my relationships with friends. Okay, I wrote down all the gears of my life, and I visually put each of these things, like they were a dashboard of my car, on the wall in my office. And when I walk in the day, you only need 3 colors, red, yellow, and green, right? And when I walk in, at any given time, I look. And let's just say you just sold a company. Your financial health gauge is green. But you also yelled at your mom 2 weeks ago and you have not apologized. Your parent gauge is red. So you know what you're going to do today? You're going to walk out of the office, set business aside, and go spend the day with your mom, right? And the truth is, and then you look at your friend gauge, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been traveling so much. You know what? I'm going to call my friends and take everybody on a trip this weekend, or whatever it is. You will never achieve balance. You will never achieve perfection. But you know what? If you give yourself permission to be good enough, it's a pretty damn good life, okay? People know you care because you call and say, you don't have to say this because it's weird, I was looking at my friend gauge, right? But you are looking at that. I visually look at it and I ask myself regularly, what's red in my life, what's green and what's yellow, and I know what I'm doing right now. And I constantly bounce between those things, and I never get it right, but everybody knows I'm at least trying, and it matters to me because I see it all the time. And I call and I say, hey man, I feel like I've been neglecting this, let's go do this. Or there's a time in your life you just had a new kid and you need a bigger house, and it's okay for you to tell your friends, I really need a bigger house, I'm going to apologize in advance, I'm not going to be a good friend the rest of this year because I got to make this down payment. It's okay because you know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you know what's going to suffer for it, and you call those people and you talk to them. So I have a dashboard on my wall. I look at it every single week, and I adjust my priorities week by week, and I accept the fact that if I'm trying my best and doing good enough, everybody else will accept that too. So I just want to end there. I want you guys to think about this. By the way, some of my favorite calls ever is when people call me and say, I think I finally hit my resonant frequency. That's the coolest call ever. When people call and say, I listened to it, I made adjustments in my life, and I actually feel I'm the happiest I've ever been before. That literally, people ask me all the time, why don't you just retire, right? And stop all the time. Actually, what people always tell me is, why don't you go golf? And you should just take the rest of your life golfing or whatever. First of all, there's a reason I don't golf. It's not a sport if you can't play defense. Okay? If I could block your shot with my club on the tee, I would totally golf. But I have to stand there passively, play no defense, and watch you beat me. It's not a sport for me. Okay? But people ask me that all the time, and there's a reason, because it's incumbent upon every one of us to care that everyone else around us is getting closer to their resonant frequency, right? It gave me a purpose. The more people by the end, whenever my time on this planet is up here, the more people that came and said, something you taught me helped me get either to or closer to a life that I actually love. That's why I can never retire. Thank you guys so much.